Amazing. Well, I want to keep the conversation going on equal pay. Joining me this morning is U of H professor and director of Institute for Research on Women, Gender, and Sexuality, Elizabeth Gregory. Thank you so much for coming in this morning. We appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Watching that, you get cold chills. It's really, truly moving.
It's true, and it was right here in Houston.
Right here in Houston. Before we get into the topic, I noticed, as I was mentioning during the story, I was going over the show with my producer, Sam, earlier today, and I noticed your experience. Walk us through how you got involved in women's studies and doing the work you do today.
Well, it started off with poetry, because I'm an English professor and I work on a poet who dealt with a lot of gender issues, and gradually came into WGSS, which is an interdisciplinary realm. It's a real opportunity to work with people across disciplines. So I got very involved in economics, and our institute does a lot of focus on economic dynamics as well as gender and sexuality dynamics in the lives of Houstonians.
Yeah.
So recently did a big report on domestic violence, which turns out to have a big economic component related even to equal pay. So, you know, people are more vulnerable if they can't leave, if they can't afford an apartment on their own because their pay is too low. And their kids, they don't want their kids to be homeless. So, you know, all these different issues.
It's cyclical.
Yeah. They all connect.
You know, I'm glad you brought up that point. Earlier this year, we did an initiative here that's still ongoing called Breaking Free, and we really peeled back the layers of domestic violence, and that was one of the things that we found too, is that equal pay does play a role in that violence. The battle of sexes is the root of it is regarding equal pay. What did pay look like for women back in the 70s?
They were making 57 cents on the dollar.
57 cents.
And now it's about 80 cents overall. So
progress, but still
it's progress.
Not equal.
Still, women are making $10,000 a year less on average than men in across different fields for doing equitable work.
Yeah. I know, hey, Glenn, I'm not sure if you have that graph. I do know that you brought graphs with you. Do we have the graphs in here in studio by chance? I don't want to put you on the spot, but I know you brought graphs with you showing how the gender wage gap has improved. Break these graphs down for us. The first one, right? Is it this one, Sam?
Yep.
Gender wage gap. Yes, okay.
So
thank you, Glenn. Thank you.
This chart gives a nice connection between the rise in wages and the changes in the laws around. So the factors that can impact these inequities are occupational segregation, where women or men are tracked into different kinds of jobs, and then those jobs have different pay scales associated with them, even though they may have similar skills and value to the company. So, or for instance, say women being pushed into care jobs or social service jobs, or seen as inappropriate for doing tech jobs, and it just so happens that there's a big pay differential between those jobs. So that's occupational segregation. But then there's also discrimination, where people just don't think you should be doing this job, or where they're actively choosing against you, or they're biased against you. And then another big factor is the lack of universal childcare, which means because children are only in school during work hours 37% of the time during their lives, between 0 and 18, somebody has to take care of them the rest of the time. And that frequently is their mom, who has to step out.
Oftentimes,
And that means a lot of women are working part-time or not at all. And if they do step back full-time, they frequently don't get back on that same track. So it has a long-term effect on their earning.
And again, that pattern could change if pay was equal.
If pay was equal, if we thought about expanding childcare so that it's not just available to people who can pay high amounts, but is also, you know, is a universal
which is a whole
benefit.
other discussion in itself, right? This year, speaking of this year is also the 60th anniversary of the Equal Pay Act.
That's right.
The tournament that we just watched with Billie Jean King was 10 years after that act was passed, which requires men and women in the same workplace be given equal pay for equal work. thoughts on, post 60 years and that not being really the case?
Well, it's a good rule, but it's not really enforced. So there's been an act called the Paycheck Fairness Act that's been proposed since 1997 by Representative DeLauro from Connecticut in every session of Congress since 97. It hasn't passed yet, but it keeps getting a better audience, more attentive hearing, and it did pass the House a couple times. And that would allow more enforcement of the Equal Pay Act, because even now, you can't ask people in many jobs what their salary is, so you don't know whether you're being paid less. So that would allow you to be able to find out whether you're being paid inequitably,
right.
So that you could then bring suit if you weren't. So there are a lot of sort of carry through things. You can have a general principle law like everybody should be paid equitably and equally, but if you don't enforce it, it's not going to happen.
Well, what about, too, I've always wondered, when you have female managers, when you have women running shops, is it their job to then push for this equal pay, knowing very well that that's not the case? Is it up to them? Like, what happens to women when they assume these roles of management and they have that opportunity to change the way this looks and they don't seize it? Are women in those roles changing the way this is, or are they just adding to the frustrations?
I would say they probably are. I mean, again,
They probably are what?
Assisting in change. So
Yeah.
the change has occurred to some degree. And if you're saying, do people in management positions always think about the bottom line and try to use this? Because it's basically a free ride for employers if you think, okay, the norm is that women are going to be paid less.
Right.
So let's just pay them less and we'll save money. But that's really short-sighted, because if you are paying your workers more, and that's happening across the board, they're going to be spending more in everybody else's businesses. You're going to be growing the economy. So this idea that you're going to be saving by scrimping on somebody's salary, making their children hungry, essentially de-skilling your own workforce, is short-sighted.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
I just often wonder, the bottom line is business in a lot of ways, and so it's fascinating to me when you dissect a place of employment and see what's what, and if you have people in these positions of power really petitioning for that change that we all hope for, change that we all long for, and it's always fascinating to me to see if that happens. Do you think this is a conversation that can be brought up at the dinner table as we approach the holiday season to inspire young women, but also young men too, to include them in the conversation? Is this an appropriate conversation to have at the table?
Totally. I mean, because when women are paid too little, their whole family suffers. So if they're bringing home $10,000 less to their family, their husband might have to work an extra job. So it's not just the females who feel the effect. Everybody feels it.
Women in positions right now, if they are privy to information that tells them that their male counterparts are making more than what they are, how do you suggest they go about having a conversation with their employers about equal pay?
Well, it is illegal to, they can bring it up directly if they know that. They can bring it up with their employer, especially if they're in a position of, viewing the entire payroll, that kind of thing. But it's up to both men and women to make this change. It's not really on the backs of women, especially since there are many fewer women bosses. So you can't really just wait for them to trickle up into the roles. That's been the issue with childcare overall, because there haven't been women in policy-making roles to create a family support infrastructure. Women haven't been able to trickle up into policy-making roles to create it. I mean, it's like a vicious cycle. So since it doesn't exist, it's been a really hard slog for women to get into positions of policy making.
Well, I know this is just one of the very few conversations we could have on this topic. You're welcome back anytime to chat about whatever it is you want. I've enjoyed this conversation. I know we weren't able to get to race, in which we know plays a big role in this as well.
Race and gender both operate basically as a kind of work assignment system, or they have done over the years. but that's shifting.
Yeah, and with Houston being, the fourth largest metro in the country and one of the most diverse cities in the nation, certainly that is a factor here. Okay.
Very much so.
Elizabeth Gregory, thank you so much for coming in this morning. We do appreciate it.